Today I'm going to talk about lessons I've learned in the last 3 years about how we can deal with life when life doesn't go the way we actually wanted it to, when things happen that we didn't want to happen, or when things just don't happen that we wish they would. Now, the first thing would be that I think life shouldn't necessarily be as much about getting what we want, but more about how we deal with life or how we react when things don't go the way we wish they would. Basically, it should be about making the most of what we can get in our current situation, because there's so many things that we simply can't control, and if we focus too much on always getting what we want, even though we can't control it, we will just be miserable in the end. Sometimes it's just simply literally impossible to get the very thing you want the most or the thing that you really want. For instance, when you find someone really great but they don't like you back as much, you can't change that, and trying to get what you want or just wanting it itself will only make things even worse. What you can do though is meet lots of new people, see if there's someone else that you like as much or almost as much and actually does like you back. You can't maybe in that situation get the very thing you want, but you can look for other possibilities. There's so many other people in this world, so many other people that you could build a connection with. It's a waste of time and a waste of your effort to concentrate on this one thing if you know it's not going to get anywhere or that you know it's not going to work. What you can do in that situation is put yourself out there and meet as many new people as possible. Or also just strengthen the bonds between the friends that do like you a lot and find the connection that you want to need that way, and not maybe focus on that specific person that maybe doesn't want you or doesn't like you as much as you like them, but focus on the people who actually do like you a lot instead of concentrating on the one person that you wish you could be with but you can't. And also, if, for example, you break your leg, there's no point getting upset about the fact that it happened. It's not going to change anything. Instead, try to concentrate on what you can do to improve your situation and the things that you can still do that give you lots of joy that you can do without necessarily moving around that much. And focus on the things that you still can do until it heals properly. And this leads me to the next point, that all suffering is resistance to the pain that we feel. So Mark Manson very often talks about Buddhism, and one thing that I really like, that if you kind of get hit by an arrow, so the actual pain, you can't avoid that. You can't avoid the actual pain that you're going to feel because of that arrow that hit you, and it's going to hurt no matter what. But what you can control is that you don't feel suffering, and suffering would basically be, when it comes to this arrow having hit you, not thinking, oh, why did this have to happen to me? Oh, this hurts so much. Basically, just not judging the situation and making things even worse by thinking about how awful this situation is and how you wish it wasn't happening. So basically, radical acceptance is extremely important to not feel too bad when things go wrong, when something happens that you actually prefer didn't happen, to just radically accept it and judge it as little as possible and giving it as little negative meaning as possible, and maybe even seeing how in the grand scheme of things it could actually be seen as a positive thing in the long run. So basically, don't complain about the cards that you have been dealt with. Instead, try to play those cards as well as possible that you have been given. Try to make the most of what you have got and forget about the things that you can't get. Be grateful about the things that you have got. See how much you appreciate the things that you have got right now. Think about it often. Don't take it for granted, because probably if those things were gone as well, you would also be thinking, oh, why did this happen to me? And you would suddenly notice that the things that you don't appreciate right now as much, because you're thinking about this thing that you would appreciate if it was in your life, but it isn't. Appreciate what you have got, because those very things could also turn into these things that you can't get anymore or that you don't have anymore. And once that happens, you will feel really stupid about taking it for granted and not appreciating it when it was there. Those very things that you still have could be just as unattainable as a thing that you are craving for that you haven't got. But they're not unattainable right now, so be happy about that, because that could change too. Be grateful for what you still have while you've still got it. And this then leads me to the fourth thing, that happiness is basically your wants divided by your haves. So detach from your wants as much as you possibly can. It's okay to have them, but don't make them control your life. Otherwise, you're going to end up very miserable. So basically, be very, very happy with the things that you do have and want less of the things that you don't. Just because someone doesn't love you back, one certain person, doesn't mean that you're just totally unlovable and not love-worthy at all. Because you've probably got very many friends that still, if you're lucky, I mean, there are also people who are very lonely today. I do know that. I mean, there's a big loneliness epidemic right now. And especially as an adult, it's really difficult to make friends. So if you haven't got many friends either, I feel very sorry for you. That's a real shame. But if you're a person who does have lots of friends or does have friends at all and is thinking about wanting to have some other person that you can't in your life right now, think about the fact that those people who do love you right now. If you don't, just all I can say is try to do your best to, if you can, if it's not too difficult, to build friendships, because connection is really important. But I know that for some people it can be very, very difficult. If you're like really not confident at all and totally shy, I do understand how difficult that situation is, and I don't want to say that if you are in that position that it would be really easy to, if it's so difficult for you. So you can still basically be lovable but not necessarily deserve love, as in being entitled to it. No one owes you anything. You can deserve love in general, but not from a specific person, basically, because deserving somehow also means that you're entitled to it, and you're not entitled to any affection from any specific person. And you wouldn't like it if someone felt entitled to your affection. So be okay with the fact that it's okay for other people not to love you back, because you also wouldn't like it yourself if someone really felt entitled to your affection that you maybe didn't necessarily like that much. And I think also because of these romance stories that somehow these love stories convey the message that you just have to love someone enough, and if you love them enough, then they will love you back, or I don't know, that how much you love the other person is all that matters. And somehow unrequited love is often romanticised, which I think it's like, oh, that poor person who isn't loved back, and why doesn't the other person love them back, and so forth. But actually, I think it's definitely not a good thing that these love stories somehow convey the message that if you love someone enough, or if you love them so much, that then it should happen for you, that you should get together with that person, or that they should love you. There's no point at which you love someone so much without them loving you as much in return, that they should all of a sudden love you simply just because you love them that much, you know what I mean? Just because you feel totally infatuated, or I don't know, doesn't mean that it like should happen, or that it's definitely, if it's meant to be, then it would be. And if it isn't, then it's obviously not meant to be, except if you haven't tried yet, if you haven't asked the other person whether they feel for you as well, that's a different matter. But if you know that they don't, it's not meant to be just because you feel totally in love with that person. And loving that other person more isn't going to make them love you, and doesn't mean that they should love you and that they should feel sorry for you. You would also not necessarily like it if someone really tried so hard to love you as much as possible, but you just didn't feel attracted to them no matter what, simply because they're not your type. And they somehow continued, although you've already given them the signal that you're not interested and you're not going to be interested. Now, if you want to hear about more lessons about that I think I might have learnt, but my opinions could change with more life experience, I'm still very young. I do realise that no single person on this earth has everything figured out and has all the answers. everyone is continually figuring stuff out and will be wrong every now and then. So I could also be wrong about this. But if you want to listen to more things that I might have understood more about relationships, you can watch this here.